Hey everybody, Eric Swett here for TheGamer. We're here at the Disney Lorcana North American Championship. I'm joined by someone that all fans recognize, the mastermind of design, Steve Warder. How are you?
I'm doing great.
It's really great to get some one-on-one time with you. Usually we're being towered over by your co-designer, Ryan Miller. So it's great to see you. For those who maybe don't know, can you walk us through what the event is, what's going on here, what the attendees can do?
So this is the North American Championships. Mm-hmm. This is where players that have qualified can come here. They can test their mettle against other players and try to earn a spot at Worlds. And even if you're not qualified, you can come and play in what's called last chance qualifiers, get a spot into the main event, and hopefully get an opportunity to come to Worlds.
Yeah, we're here on Friday afternoon. The end of the last chance qualifier is going on right now. So there's a lot of people that are really hoping that they can get in to qualify for this weekend. So that's very exciting. And then I also noticed there's a lot of side events for the attendees. There is a lot of different game modes, and multiplayer is a big focus. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Ryan and I always wanted multiplayer to be a thing. One of our guidelines was that the game had to be able to be played multiplayer without changing a bunch of rules.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've been able to do with some of these events now is start having multiplayer challenges where people can team up and they can play together and work together and talk with each other. And it creates a very fun, like, working together sort of gameplay that is really nice. It's a lot less competitive in a lot of ways, and it just feels a lot more casual.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite things about coming to these events and just having new ways to play the game, new ways to experience it. Earlier today, I got to play Chaos Sealed, which is like perfect timing because we've got 6 sets, so you can do Sealed with 1 pack from each set. And that was a lot of fun just because there was so much variety. Everybody's deck was like so different compared to regular Sealed. So I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to set 6 for exactly that sort of reason.
Chaos set. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so if we're kind of at the end of this first inaugural competitive season, if we could kind of go back to the beginning, to the planning stages of all this, were there things that for you were priorities, things that were really important that these events should have or should be?
Well, I remember even before we had a finalized game, we were talking about needing organized play.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might remember Ryan's robust organized play comments. And one of the things that we had talked about was that we really wanted to have events at Disneyland.
Yeah.
And of course, just like Worlds had to be at Disney Worlds.
Yeah.
So that was one of my dreams that I really was hoping would happen. And
here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
In a year and a half, we're in Disneyland, and Worlds will be at Disney Worlds, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I have really loved watching these events evolve in such a short span of time and grow. And I know that you've shared with me before about how important it is for you to be with the players in the community and get to hear their stories and how they've connected with the game. What are some of your takeaways now that we're sort of at the end of the season from being at these events and being part of this?
I know I sound like a broken record, but our community is one of the best community that we could have possibly hoped for, right? Disney fans love just being with everybody and talking about Disney, and card game players love talking about cards. And so everyone's got something that they can talk about, favorite characters, favorite cards, what works, what doesn't. But some of my favorite stories are just the families that have come together. And, you know, my 6-year-old daughter, we didn't have anything to do together, and this gave us something to do together. I had a grandparent come up to me and they said that their daughter played and their kids played, and so they would all sit around the table together. So you had 3 generations playing Lorcana together. And so just those sorts of stories have always been truly special to me. And these events, we always hear new stories that are so special and so fun to hear.
Cool. So one of the unique things about competitive Lorcana is the 2-game format. Now that we're at the end of the season, do you have a perspective about 2-game format? And has it performed the way that you guys expected it to?
There's a lot of learnings that we have had from the 2-game format. As you said, each of the events we've kind of evolved and learned things. So there will be a lot of discussion within the organized play team. There will be a lot of kind of just discussion on what would be the best way to move forward. And so I think it's a matter of a wait and see at this point for people, because we want to do what's best for the players.
Yeah. My biggest, when I first walked in today, the thing that hit me the most was how evolved the spectator experience has become, especially here at the finals. And it's just such a beautiful seating area with like giant screens, and it's like exactly what you expect from a competitive TCG experience. So I don't really have a question, but I just want to say it looks wonderful.
It is. It was truly breathtaking walking in this morning and seeing that. And again, it comes from each and every event that we've had. We've kind of learned things, and early on, I remember that we had the little tiny screens that people were trying to watch from, and then we got really big screens that people got to watch, and and now we have an amazing seating area that people can sit down and watch.
Yeah. So we're at a competitive event. I want to talk to you a little bit about the meta. And I know that this is something that you want to be careful about because you're really cautious about not influencing the game with your comments. But I guess the first thing I want to say is one of Lorcana's biggest strengths is how diverse the meta has become so quickly. I think everyone expected that it would take some time. We'd need enough cards to make enough different decks. But really by Inklands, by set 3 onward, it has been such a wide meta with so many different ways to play and so many different competitive decks. And that's not always the case with card games. And so I guess my first question is just, is that like the top priority when you're designing? We need to make sure that there is a wide meta with lots of decks. Like how do you do that, and how important is that in the design process?
Well, it's obviously very, very important.
Yeah.
Our top priority is making sure that the game remains fun. And one of those aspects is that there are all these different options for what you can do with your deck, what will work, what won't work. And so I think that just naturally leads us to a wide variety of viable decks that people can use. And I have a great development team, and they're very good about making sure that things can seem very powerful, but not be over the top powerful.
Right.
And so I really get to trust them that nothing too crazy is going to get through. I also make sure to keep an eye on things myself, but making sure that there's enough cards that everyone can play with and build different decks with is paramount for us.
I'm really fascinated about this relationship between how you and your team shape the game through your design and how the players shape the game through their deck construction and their play. And I'm curious if you could give it a percent. When you look at the meta today, how much of it is your design versus what the players created? In other words, did you know exactly every deck that was gonna be meta? And
no, I don't. I would be surprised if it was ever possible for us to do something like that.
Yeah.
We always say we try our hardest. We have a lot of really talented people on the development team, but when the cards are released to the players, in the first hour that they have had it, they combined have spent far more time than we could possibly spend. And there's huge teams that work together to try to brew up the best decks that are possible. And so our goal isn't always to get exactly what the deck is down to the cards. We probably run a lot more 4-ofs and things because the idea is to make sure that cards aren't too powerful, to make sure decks aren't crazy, and that people are still going to have fun. And it's difficult if someone's focused on one deck and trying to fine tune it so much that it would be able to win something at one of these events. It would take all their time, and I can't possibly have enough people working on that all the time to do that. So we have a lot of people, and we have to trust our intuition about a lot of these things. Just make sure that nothing's over the top.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I work in video games a lot. And when it comes to balance, sometimes, this is oversimplifying it, but it's just a matter of clicking a button and changing the value. In card games, they aren't like that, right? You have to design in the future to rebalance things, or in the case of Bucky, change the way a card works. And it's really interesting we kind of have these two examples of cards that people considered overpowered, and Bucky was one of them, and Diablo was the other. And Bucky got changed, and Diablo didn't, and we saw by the next set that there was suddenly an answer to it. Is that, I'm not asking specifically, I'm not asking specifically if that's not why Diablo was banned, but you must have known Diablo's gonna have a different role in this meta come the next set, right?
Yeah, well, and going back to Bucky, to us, Bucky wasn't a power level concern.
Okay.
These sort of competitive events, Bucky is really strong, and he supports a particular deck type. The problem is that deck type isn't very fun to play.
Right.
And that's where I think that the biggest challenge with him came in, and why we wanted to adjust him so that people would have more fun.
Yeah.
Diablo is a bit different because he's very progressive for the player that played him. So he doesn't take away the options for the opponent. And that's really where the difference in gameplay was. And speaking towards what we plan in the future, yes, we actually very much seed cards in that we fully expect will play differently in 1 or 2 sets or 3 sets. It is planned out that way.
I imagine that your role and the way that cards are designed has changed a lot from before the game came out to the first few sets to now. Can you speak at all about how that's changed for you?
Well, a big change has definitely been that my team has grown quite a lot. I have other designers now that help out, and they lead sets and they've designed things. We also have a lot of discussions with the narrative team, and we've worked really hard at creating the story that is for Lorcana, and making the characters feel like they belong in our world, and they're doing the things that they are in our world and our story. And so, my amazing design team has worked very hard and tirelessly at that. And with more people, there's always challenges, and my team has been great at tackling them and really working on these future sets that I think everyone will really enjoy.
Cool. Well, it's always great to catch up with you. I'm excited about this weekend, and I'm even more excited about Worlds. So anything else you want to touch on about a North American Championship?
Just, it's been amazing here.
Yeah.
Like I said, a dream come true. People are amazing. Community's always been amazing. And I look forward to seeing what comes up as the decks people are playing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Stay tuned for more from the North American Championship.
Hey everybody, Eric Sweats here for TheGamer. We're here at Disneyland for the North American Lorcana Championship, joined by a man who really needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Brand manager, co-designer, Ryan Miller.
Thanks
How are
for
you?
having me, dude. It's always nice to chat with you. You've done so much for Lorcana, and it's, your coverage, you're always, it's great. So it's always fun to talk with you, man.
Thanks.
It's
Yeah,
great.
I was talking to your better half yesterday.
Steve,
Yeah, we missed you. So I'm glad we got to connect today.
Oh man, I love Steve. He's like a brother to me, that guy. I've known him for so long, and to be able to work with him, it was like one of the perks of this job. Like, it's like, oh, it's a trading card game? Check. Disney, love it. And I get to work with Steve. Awesome. Sign me up, right?
You want, right? Yeah. We first met many moons ago.
Oh yeah, it was a while back.
That was D23 2022. Yeah. And we were talking Lorcana, and you couldn't tell me anything back then.
Yeah, because we hadn't announced the gameplay, we hadn't announced anything, just the game's coming, and here's some cards, right? And that was it.
Yeah, but the one thing that you did tell me was how important organized play is to you. That was a passion of yours, and it was something that was built into the game from the very beginning.
Yeah, I started. So I started, playing in Magic in the '90s, and I wasn't very good at it. But I loved it, and so I would organize my own tournaments at a local coffee shop. It was called Chaos Coffee in Bakersfield, California. It hasn't been there in a while. It's closed down many years ago. I'll never forget the first time I did a tournament there, and I charged like $5, and everyone gives me all this money, and I hand it to the guy that runs the shop, and he goes, "So do I split this with you?" And I'm like, it had never occurred to me to take any of that money. Anyway, so I a little tangential there, but I've always enjoyed making experiences for people to come together, because I think that's one of the great things that games do, right? Like, they're really great at bringing people together to make memories, to make new friends, new connections, right? And so when I first started at Wizards, that was my first job there too, was judging
As a judge,
tournaments. And you get to see that firsthand, you know, and you get to see so many people come together. And so when it came to, you know, designing Lorcana, we wanted to make sure that it had a very welcoming community. It's one of the things that we will always strive for. But at some point, the community is up to the community. What type of community is going to be, right? And that's one of the things I'm most proud of for Lorcana. We have the best community. Everyone is great. They're nice. It's welcoming. There's so many people. We've got families and couples and friends. And, you know, I think I was in Atlanta at the challenge, and a group came up to have some cards signed, and this guy goes, "Hey, that's my best man over there. I met him at Lorcana League." And I'm like, that's amazing, right? You know, the connections people make. And to have be a part of something that does that, I think it's just, you know, I get goosebumps just talking about it. It's just an amazing thing, right? And so it's something that that organized play, and a lot of times we think of organized play as just tournaments, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Organized play really is just about getting people together, right? And so it's, you know, we came out with a league system that was okay. Like, it was, you know, but it's one thing we're always kind of working on. We've got a great team that works on organized play that we didn't have when we first started, right? It was really, it was almost like a startup when we started. We had a very small team. Now we've got a great team of folks, and we're always trying to get better. That's the key. You know, there's some podcast I listened to a long time ago, and the lady said something that always stuck with me. We're not here to be right. We're here to get it right. You know, and that really stuck with me, right? It's like, okay, you know, yeah, it would be nice to just hit a home run on the first swing, right? But really, that, you know, going through the effort, iterating, getting feedback, and just putting your ego aside and saying, okay, this is how we're going to get better. That is the true work of a great experience, right? And I think we've got a great team that does that, and we're always trying to make things better. And this first season of challenges, I think our team has done an amazing job. And the stuff we have planned next year, you know, it's just going to get better. So it's just exciting stuff.
Yeah. So we're here kind of towards the end of this first season. And man, so if I could get you to maybe reflect a little bit on this first season from Lille and Atlanta at the beginning to where we are here and Paris for the European finals. What are some of your big takeaways? What are some of your favorite parts about it, and what do you feel like you've learned from this first season?
Well, I think the team has learned a lot. Like, I think like that first one. So I was at Atlanta. That was the same weekend as Lille. So Steve went to Lille. I went to Atlanta, and it was a great experience. There's just a lot you don't know until you know.
Right.
Even, I mean, I've been in this business 20 plus years, right? But you just don't know until you know, right? One of the things that really surprised us pleasantly so was how many first-time trading card gamers came to a challenge event to compete, right? And that was just awesome, right? But that also told us, okay, we're not just getting the very competitive players. We want to make sure there's something here for everyone. And so that's when we started. Even at Atlanta's, when I came up with Pack Rush, that was the first time it was called. I called it what did I call it? Inkcaster, because at that time you could play anything as ink, just like the hidden Inkcaster card lets you do that. Now we took that rule out, of course. We don't play that rule. And we just started playing it with the attendees at the event, you know, and that ability to kind of start adding fun things for people to do that aren't necessarily in the competition, or maybe they are, but they're taking a break or something like that. And so I think that has been the big thing, is how can we increase the experience for people who are attending and for competitors who are also wanting to do some of the side events and that sort of thing. And so being able to, you know, try something out. Okay, this isn't working, or maybe this could work better this way, and then we change it up a little bit. And to see, you know, I wasn't able to go to a lot of challenges this season. I went to Atlanta, and then I didn't go to another one until Seattle, right? And so for me to see the difference too, just organizationally, you know, PPG's been amazing, right? Pro Play Games are the ones that, you know, in North America, they're the ones that operate these events for us. They've been great. I've known George and Anna Molina for years. I worked with them on other games too, and they're just wonderful. But to see the difference from Atlanta to Seattle was really cool, right? Because and I'm not saying it went from bad to good. It went from good to great, right? You know, they really turned it up, and it's such a fun experience. And to see like people bringing their families and their significant others and all these, I mean, it's just wonderful. And that's what I hoped at the beginning, is that, yeah, there's a competitive aspect of these events, but I wanted this kind of celebrational aspect.
Yeah.
Like, let's come together and celebrate our love for Lorcana, and to see that kind of play out and see people just coming and having a great time. And like later on today, I'm playing Pack Rush with a bunch of folks, right? And it's just like, man, it's just so much fun. And so that to me has been, I think, the biggest evolution of the challenges, right? I mean, tournaments are something that they've been done a lot. People know how to do tournaments, right? But how do you do like this kind of celebrational thing? I mean, we're not the first to do that either, but like, how do you really add that? And especially do it in a way that's Lorcana, in a way that's Disney, right? And that's been really neat to see. So
for me, I think one of the things that's made the biggest impact is just seeing the demand, both for the competitors and the attendees. Every single one of these events just sold out in seconds. And I think going back to Atlanta, if I remember correctly, it like started at 500 and then got bumped up to like 2,000.
We started at 512 because, again, so one of our philosophically, one of our things, our goals, even with just this whole game, but it was really, but especially for these challenge events, was like, we don't want to add too much too soon. Like, so that's why, for example, we didn't have, in Atlanta, we didn't have on-demand events yet, because we're like, okay, let's just keep it simple. Let's get the system going, and then we can start layering onto it. Because if you try to do too much too soon, that's worse than if you know. So I think that so that's why we wanted to make sure that we kind of started really basic. And so 512 to a lot of folks was like, that's crazy. Why would you start so low? Well, it's because we wanted to make sure that we were doing manageable growth. And then, of course, it became very obvious very quickly that we had way more demand than we even anticipated. So we were able to, I mean, the big question is location, right? Can we get a venue that can support that many people? And we were able to have that flexibility in this first season. And so we were able to not only double it, but double it again. To have that tournament sport, to have the expertise on the side of Pro Play Games and our team, to be able to make that change so quickly, right? So and then to create a great experience for that many people is not easy, right? And we didn't always do that, right? We didn't always hit it off. We definitely made our mistakes, but I'm so proud of this team because, you know, we always come back after every event. Every event we come back and we say, okay, what didn't work? What can we do better? How can we change this in a way that's manageable long term, right? Because you could always change something on the fly, but how manageable is that? And that's the important thing, right? We want to give the best experience we can in the time and resources we have, right? I mean, that's the key. You know, we owe it to them, I think. We owe it to folks who spend their time and money on our game to give them the best experience we can give them. But that means we have to iterate. We have to be always taking feedback from each other, from our fans, from our players, and just kind of mixing that in and seeing what we can do next time, but in a manageable way, right?
We have some of the best players in the world
100%.
Here at this.
Amazing competitors here. Amazing competitors.
When you watch people playing Lorcana at the highest level, what do you take away from that? Do you ever feel like, I didn't know my game could be played this way? or is it more like, yes, my design?
It's a little bit of both, really, because I've never been like a high-level player. Like I said about my story about the coffee shop, like I enjoy making experiences. You know, I was a pretty good Magic player, but I was never like, you know, super tournament level. I enjoy the community aspect. I enjoy the crazy card combinations, that sort of thing. That's my kind of way that I like to go. What surprised me was how much skill testing is involved in this game. Like, we knew going in that there are some very good skill testing points, and in any game you want to make sure you have those, because, you know, that's how you level up as a player, is you get to these, like, for example, deciding which card to put as ink is a very skill testing moment, right? Because you're basically saying, okay, which of these cards that are inkable do I not want to play for the rest of this game, right? And that depends on your deck. It depends on what your opponent's playing. There's a lot of skill there. Now, as a new player, you could just put a card down. Like, it's not, and so that to me hits a nice sweet spot of like, well, it is skill testing, but it doesn't feel bad if you get it wrong necessarily. You know, because they're face down, you don't look at those cards and go, well, I wish I had that card in my hand. You know, that I put 3 turns down, right?
Until you're really good, you might not know it was a mistake.
Exactly, right? And I think that's key, because what you don't want is early on in a player's kind of journey, you don't want too many moments of me feeling dumb, right? Like, it's like, you know, you want those feelings of like, oh, next time I'm going to do this. Those are the key moments, right? And so I think with this game, you know, we wanted a structure that was relatively easy to get to understand and play, because we wanted a lot of Disney fans who may have not ever played a game like this to come on board and feel relatively comfortable kind of learning. It's always any new game, you're going to have some discomfort, some kind of like working through. That's part of the deal, right? Any new thing, of any kind, right? You're going to have that moment. But what really impressed me was Steve and his team and their ability to make these card sets, because I only worked on the first 3 sets before I moved to brand. Their ability to make such a wide variety of cards that are for such a wide variety of players. But when I see people playing at this level and I see kind of the interactions, and it's kind of wonderful, because a trading card game has this ability to just, it takes on its own life. Yeah. Right? It goes beyond the bounds of what you set out for it. And that's part of the challenge of a trading card game design. You have to, it's not a box experience where the entire universe is in that box, right? You got to design it with this kind of infinite future ahead of you. And to see it take on that own life is just really rewarding, I think. And we hope for that. Like it's one of those things you hope to make a game where like it's easy to get into, but it also there's a lot of like you can get really strategic if you want to. That's kind of the hope, right? Yeah. But you never know until the rubber hits the road, right? And so it's really, I think, professionally very satisfying for Steve and I to see that it did pan out. We did hit a small target of like, here's a game that is relatively easy to get into. Not the simplest game, but that's not simple is not the goal always, right? But it is a game that if you want to, you can really dig into the strategy and you can level up, right, if you want. But if you just want to play princesses, I said this from the very beginning with you, right? You want to play your princesses, play them. It's awesome, right? If you want to just collect the 7 dwarves, awesome, right? You get to decide how you Lorcana, right? Like you get to do that. And I think that's incredibly satisfying to see the fans pick that up. So
I got to ask you about Azurite Sea. As long as I've known you, you've been talking about pirates, your pirate decks.
Which I think I told you was a total mistake, because I was playing cards that weren't out yet. That's why I was excited for my pirate deck. And everyone, ever since the game came up, you're like, what pirate deck are you talking about? And then I started, I'm like, oh. Not only was I playing cards that weren't out yet, but some of them either got pulled from the set or completely changed, because that's the point of playtesting. I'm like, well, it's a deck that will never exist, unfortunately.
You can imagine.
It existed in a period of time, and now it is evaporated into the ether. But I'm a history nerd. And I love almost all history, but my specific history that I really nerd out about is the Age of Sail. Generally in the like late 1700s, early 1800s, the Age of Fighting Sail has always been a fascination of mine. Not necessarily pirates specifically, although I love my pirates, but just that there's something about the timbers and the iron and the sails and just it's just fascinating to me, very evocative to me. And so to be able to do a set that is in that kind of ballpark has just been really fun. And I was absolutely playing cards from Azurite Sea years ago, and it just misspoke when I was like, hey, wait for this pirate deck. Turns out you had to wait a little longer than I had anticipated, but what do you do? But yeah, I just love the theme. It's such a fun theme, and just to see characters, just see Mickey Mouse as a buccaneer, that's just so fun, right? It's just so, so it was a very exciting set to work on.
Yeah, that, and I was just talking to Shane Harley, creative director, about the world building in this set and how much it feels like we're getting this glimpse into the world of Lorcana, the mechanics of the world of Lorcana.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it almost feels like a new era for the game, because those early sets were very much focused on the Disney characters and seeing them in a new way. And now it feels like we're really diving into the world.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. I mean, those first few sets really just foundational, right? Like, this is the world. These are the kind of some of the rules, some of the players, that sort of thing. And now we're kind of venturing, right? Like that's the difference. I think we're kind of venturing out. The Azurite Sea is a great example. It's this magical sea that can kind of make a maze out of itself, right? And you have to navigate this maze, and like, and so it's just this is, we kind of ventured out in the Inklands, we kind of dipped our toe, but that first 4-set story arc kind of wraps itself up very nicely with Ursula and all that stuff. This is our first kind of like, we're kind of really into the unknown now, and so it's exciting. And we knew like exploration and ships, and pirates, like they just go so well together that we wanted to wrap those themes up into this. And
cool.
It's exciting, and then of course it plays very heavily into the next set as well. But it's exciting, and I'm excited for people to dig into the world, because that's something we actually did world building well before we did any game design for this game. So we knew that it was very important for the story, and you've heard me say this before, but it's just very important that the story supports. It's not just don't know, it's not a veneer, right?
Yeah.
It's important. It's the glue, right? That
Right.
holds everything together. It explains why there are some glimmers that look different than you might know them as.
Yeah.
It explains why you might have 3 Mickeys out, right? Like these things are important. It's even if you don't get into the story, it's good to know it's there, right?
Yeah.
Like there is that foundational thing because attention to details, you've heard me say, that is how we show our love.
Yeah.
Is through the details, right? We want our players to know that we love this too. We love Lorcana, we love Disney, and the details are how we show that. And the world building, I think, exemplifies that. It is surprisingly deep. The stuff that we have never talked about that is still there. The amount of concept art, which I'm sure Shane mentioned, that we're not gonna probably ever show, but it's there for our designers to work off of because that's how robust the world design is. And it'll be neat to see folks really kind of get into the world as we go forward. We got a lot of fun plans for the story. So,
it's exciting to get deeper into.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
All right, Ryan. Now's the part of the interview where I ask you the hard-hitting questions. You know me.
Hey,
I never take it easy on you.
That's right, but you know me. I can handle
Sometimes
it.
you can stonewall.
Yeah.
All right. Here's my question. The next set, is it Arcasia's Island or Arcasia's Island?
Arcasia.
Arcasia. That's official.
That's how it's been pronounced to me. So I'm assuming that's official.
You heard it here.
Arcasia's a neat character. I don't know what we've talked about, so I'm not going to go into it, but there's some neat stuff. When you learn about who made that island and what it's for, it's very cool. So yeah.
And again, specific to the world of Lorcana. So that's what's so exciting.
That's brand new. Yeah. Arcasia's Island is brand new. It's going to be pretty neat for y'all to explore that. It's there's some fun stuff going on there, and I think it also taps into kind of the formative, kind of the origin story of Lorcana as a world. So you get to learn some neat stuff. So
nice.
But of course, I won't divulge it here.
Of course. Well, finally, the way that we end every interview: when is Powerline coming to Disney?
Well, I call that a Bruno question, and we don't talk about Bruno. So there you go.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Great
man.
to see you.
It's all right. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yep. Stay tuned for more from the North American Championship.